Okay, I've heard the bells have started to die down from people that are joining us. Um, Welcome everyone to our informational webinar for prospective investigators for our 2022 to 2024 Sea Grant RFP. I'm Jim Hurley. I'm director of the Aquatic Sciences Center, which houses our Sea Grant and Water Resources Institutes here on campus. Just wanted to mention that as we're gathering here for this meeting, we acknowledge that our statewide Wisconsin Sea Grant program exists today on traditional lands of many Native people. We welcome the duty and the opportunity to share stewardship of these lands and its waters. I'd also like to say that we at Sea Grant, like many of our partners, are committed to learning and exploring ways to better serve our community and contribute to the dismantling of systemic racism. This week, we especially stand in solidarity with our Asian and PETA communities across the state and across the country. So thanks. Let's get started. Just a quick note to, if you can, to mute your telephone or microphone. Please use the chat for questions. Jen also has her email address there, but that might be a little long to jot down. So use the chat if you want to ask questions. And we are going to record this. I hope that's okay with everyone. It's a fine day in Wisconsin, as you can see behind me. This is today's MODIS satellite imagery for the region, and it's a beautiful spring day to talk about our RFP, which represents another chapter or a newer chapter in our Sea Grant programming. Have the next slide, please. So here's what we're going to do today. You've got a little bit of a welcome. I'll give you a quick overview and just where we're heading with our federal budget. Jen will follow up with talking about how to develop the proposal, some of the rules of submission. We'll talk a bit about outreach, communications, but more so, we've got a larger space of time that we want to allow to be able to answer questions from you and maybe connect you with some others on these calls, whatever, and try to answer whatever questions you might have. I think we have pretty much our full management team and a number of members from our outreach, the communications, and our extension side, also along with us, and our education coordinators here too. So I think we've got everybody here that we hopefully we can answer those questions for you. Next slide. Okay, so just a basic overview of where we are today. The request for proposals responds to priorities that we have a little bit longer strategic plan than we typically have. We typically have a 4-year plan. This year, with all that's been happening, our National Sea Grant Office allowed us to add another 2 years to our strategic plan, adjust it, make some changes based on where it was for the first 4 years. And we sort of took advantage of that opportunity to revise our strategic plan. Much of that revision came as a result of the issues associated with diversity, equity, inequality, and all of the many issues that happened in our region, in our state, and in our nation over the past year, or since last May, I guess, only to be amplified yet again this week. So we opened up our strategic plan and made some fairly substantial revisions, especially in adding a focus area on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then tweaking some of our special calls to reflect issues that we thought we might want to focus on in this final 2 years that we didn't think about back about 4 years ago. So that's what the the revision is. If we look at the federal budget looks good. Sea Grant has, despite the fact that the previous administration had zeroed us out for 4 years in a row on their budget, we're actually at an all-time high for our national program for Sea Grant, and that has translated.
Another thing I didn't tell you
to
in this experiment is that these particles have nonlinear drag in this experiment.
just
They're
a second.
around.
Okay, someone beat me to the mute button. The national budget then has translated into a little bit of an increase for us. There are more national competitions that are coming out, but it actually has been a good run over the last 4 years in increasing the overall national Sea Grant program budget. One note is that there is a large chunk of the national budget that goes towards aquaculture. There will be other aquaculture competitions coming up in 2021, but we're doing internal or localized aquaculture as part of this call, as part of our omnibus proposal. What's important about that is that the national office will allow us to will match us 50% if we end up funding an aquaculture proposal, so that we can actually have more investment in the aquaculture side. So there's national competitions, and we're sort of embedding a local and regional within ours. In general, this is open to those that have PI status. You probably already know that if you've all put in pre-proposals. Next slide, please. So we'll say this over again, that we strongly encourage proposals in this particular call that promote the ideals of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion within all of our proposals. We support students to become strong scientists. We try to provide them the opportunity to do actionable science, to connect with stakeholders, so that they can see a relevance of their work in science in action. We like to have you engage stakeholders throughout a research study. Many of you have already involved them in the preparation of the pre-proposals, and we strongly encourage that to increase as the study goes on. And then finally, you'll learn today about how to connect with our Sea Grant outreach and communication staff. They're an amazing staff. It's great to be surrounded by these folks, because they make our program strong, and they can work with you on individual proposals moving forward. So Jen, I think I turn it over to you.
Yeah.
Correct?
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
So next slide, Tom. All right, thanks. I'm the Associate Director at Wisconsin Sea Grant. I haven't had a chance to meet everybody, but welcome. It's really glad to see people who've worked with us in the past, but also new names join us today. We have historically had this be a big in-person meeting with a reception, so we obviously couldn't do that this year, but hopefully next round we'll be back in person and be able to feed you some good food along with the information. But thanks for being here today. So just a bit on the process and timeline. So you can see at this point, we're in 2021 at this March 19th webinar. The next big event will be the due date for the full proposals, and that's April 30th at 3 p.m. And then the next steps are we commence an external peer review process. We have, in this case, we'll have 3 different technical panels convened to look at the different groups of proposals. And then we hope to start notifying people informally in September and October for the proposals that we'll include in our omnibus submission to the National Sea Grant Office. That's due for us at the end of October. And then the projects will begin February 1st of next year. And so next slide. Just a reminder, you've all seen the RFP priorities because you responded to them, but just wanted to show those again and mention again, there are different financial caps for the different types of proposals. Most of our base research proposals, they're all at 120,000 per year for 2 years. Our special joint call with Ohio and Minnesota is capped at 100,000 per year. And that's for each state program. So each state program can submit 100K per year for 2 years. That's why it says times 3. So for Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. And then we have our education proposals, and those are capped at 25,000 per year. And those are coordinated by Ann Mosier, who's on the line as well. Next slide. If people want to look back at those priorities and just sort of refresh what the details were related to those priorities before you start your full proposal, I just wanted to mention you can access that original RFP on our Wisconsin Sea Grant RFP landing page. I'll show you the URL in just a minute, but it's sort of the top, it's the top link in the bottom set of important links, but you just might want to review that RFP one more time before you develop the full proposal. Okay, just in terms of statistics on the competition so far, we put a little bit of our history here so you can see typically, you know, what we've received in past years for pre-proposals, full proposals, what we've encouraged, and then what we've funded. You can see this year, we're a little down from past years, which isn't surprising. We're hearing that across the Sea Grant network. We had 66 pre-proposals submitted, but we had some really good ideas submitted. We ended up encouraging 45, and these can be difficult decisions for us to, like, where to draw that line. But we're at 45 that we're encouraging. And as you can see from past years, and as Jim mentioned, we aim for about 12 to 16 new proposals that will ultimately fund. In terms of what we encouraged of our targeted areas, we encouraged 3 in the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion target. We encouraged 6 in the emerging contaminants. And then in our base focus areas, we did 13 in our healthy coastal ecosystems, 4 in our resilient communities and economies, and 11 in our sustainable fisheries and aquaculture category. We encouraged 5 in the education category, and then of the joint call for proposals, we encouraged 3. And for that particular call, we plan on and intend to just fund 1 proposal if we have a very strong proposal there. Next slide. So I just wanted to point out, you'll see more detail about this in the full proposal guidelines, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But take a really close look at the evaluation criteria as you develop your proposal. And no, it's just a little bit different between the research proposals and the education proposals. There are some slight differences there, and that's described in great detail in our full proposal guidelines. But, you know, for research, we're looking at rationale, scientific merit, clarity of objectives and how feasible the work is, innovativeness, also looking at the qualifications of the team. And this is a big one. This is a really important Sea Grant sort of evaluation criteria, is just anticipated outcomes. What is sort of the possible impact of your work, and how have you incorporated stakeholders or end users or decision makers, and as you've developed your proposal, what's the likelihood that that work might inform or help society in some way? The joint call panels, we do also have another metric here for regional importance of the work and how well the team integrates, given 3 teams in 3 different states. And then for the education panel, again, just sort of introduction and rationale, the objectives of the project, anticipated outcomes, just as I described it before, methodology, approach, and timeline, merit, budget, competency of the team, and how the work contributes specifically to Sea Grant performance metrics, which Anne has linked in the full proposal guidelines. And then I have an asterisk here just to remind you of what Jim mentioned at the beginning. We have these overarching goals to support students and to advance those principles of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. All right, next slide. Okay, so to prepare your full proposal, we have this landing page that I encourage you to go to, take a look at. Here's the address here, seagrant.wisc.edu /RFP. So if you start there, that's a good starting point. And it's got all of the information you need. But the most important new thing at this stage that we release is sort of circled there in red. And that's the 2022-24 full proposal guidelines. It's a link to a PDF. And then Tom, if you could go to the next slide. So this document is really important because it gives you all the information you need for developing your full proposal. It's, it's like a 20+ page document. So there's a lot of detail there to take a look at, but it walks you through step by step. It's got the review criteria in more detail than I described for each proposal type. We do mention that a data management plan is needed. If you're collecting any environmental data, there's a definition of that you need to look at too to understand. It's pretty broad. It's hard to get out of that requirement, but take a look at that in the instructions here. We notify you that if funded, there's a NEPA requirement. And so just to be prepared for that as well. We don't require that at the full proposal stage, just if we intend to fund. But there's a lot of good information there in the beginning. And then we do have the detailed instructions for research proposals, which are a little different in terms of what goes into them than the education proposals. There's a lot of detail associated with the joint calls. Here we're sort of trying to work together as 3 teams, 3 different state Sea Grant teams, and we all do things a little differently in-house. And so we work as a team, but there are nuances and differences in how we work with our state team to develop budgets and how you get administrative approvals and what you can include in the budget and who requires match and who doesn't. So all of that information is in the full proposal guidelines, as well as instructions for the financial approvals, which accompanies the submission. So next slide. Everything is submitted. Even the joint call proposals, it's all submitted as one package through the Wisconsin portal eDrop. And Tom Zhang, he's running our slideshow here. I don't know, Tom, if you can show your video, so give a wave, but Tom is really helpful if you have any difficulties or trouble with eDrop. His email address is here. It does require Firefox or Chrome, so just be aware of that. And then it is open now and it's accepting full proposals. So instructions are in that full proposal guideline, but that's the portal we use for submitting your full proposals. And then next slide, Tom. Okay, the deadline is 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time on Friday, April 30th, and it closes. It's sort of hardwired. We can't make exceptions, so please file early. Last minute computer glitches are just so stressful for everybody, especially the proposing team. So just encourage you to get everything in as early as you can. A couple hours in advance is a really good idea. But we're available if you have any trouble. Tom and I will be watching our email all day that day and that week. Just the minute you have a problem, reach out to us and we'll do everything we can to answer any questions. And I wanted to quickly take a moment to introduce our financial lead, Melissa Boyce. I don't know, Melissa, if you're there, if you're able to share your video and just give a wave. I don't know if folks are able to see Melissa or not. Maybe say hello, Melissa, so your voice.
Hi, everybody.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, so Melissa's our financial lead, and she's also a really great resource if you have any questions about developing your budget. Thanks. And next we've got David Hart.
Great, thanks, Jen. I'm here to talk a little bit about the outreach component of your proposals. And Jen and I and Deidre Paroff, our social scientist, a couple years ago had a chance to go to this wonderful week-long workshop that Michigan Sea Grant organized about community engaged research. And Diane Dobrnick, who is with Michigan State University, gave a presentation. And in there was really fascinating presentation on the evolution of outreach in higher education. And so just to recap here, kind of going back before a couple decades ago, that a lot of people within institutions of higher education embrace the idea of service, work that was done for the university and volunteering and kind of work within your discipline. And then over kind of beyond the 1990s, there was a lot of emphasis on outreach or academic work done on behalf of the university for the public, with the idea being that the role was to kind of get the information out from the university to those that could benefit from it. And within the last decade or so, there's been more of an engagement model that has evolved, and that's looking at co-creation of knowledge and academic work that's done with the public in a more inclusive way, in a more collaborative way. And so I think you're seeing some of the things in our RFP that have kind of embraced that engagement model. So Tom, if you want to go to the next slide. So just there's a few ideas that we have that where you as researchers can embrace this engagement model and really amplify your research impact. So one of those we would suggest is working with your end users of your work all throughout your process of your research, and especially thinking about how you engage them early as you're coming up with your ideas. I think that creates more opportunity for meaningful impact as you go through the life of your project. So think about how you engage with people who you see will be end users of your work early on in the process. You may also explore connections broader than just through your discipline. Maybe if you're a natural scientist, look at connecting with social scientists and incorporating social science into your work, or thinking about how your work relates to policy, and just strongly thinking about the interdisciplinary nature of your work. There's been a strong emphasis lately about incorporating the arts or storytelling to be able to better connect with diverse audiences for your end work. And we've got some resources at Wisconsin Sea Grant that can show you how this idea of actionable science can work. And there's the link there. You can search for Wisconsin Sea Grant and actionable science. And a lot of the ideas that our program embraces are there. And there's a resources section that can let you dive a little bit more deeply into what about how you can carry this out as well. And then I think the last idea that we have here is if you want to explore ideas, connect with our staff, with our outreach, education, and communication staff to discuss some of your ideas early on as you're thinking about your proposal. Our staff has connected with stakeholders in their areas and in their disciplines for a long time. And certainly our communication staff can help with how you think about and how you shape your stories from the work that you're doing. And you can certainly search on Wisconsin Sea Grant and our staff directory to be able to find these people. But the next couple of slides, I'll kind of give a little bit more of a picture to our staff. So I'll start with the staff that are out in our field offices across the state. So Natalie Chen is up in Superior, based at the National Estuarine Research Reserve offices. We're co-located with them up in Superior on Barker's Island. Natalie's background is in climate adaptation and tourism. Julia Nordyke is in our UW Green Bay office, and her areas are water quality and coastal communities. I know Titus is on the call here. He's our fisheries outreach specialist. He's based at the UW-GB campus in Manitowoc. And I mentioned Deidre already. She's our social scientist down in Milwaukee. And so they cover a geography, which you can see highlighted in different colors along the coast, multiple of our coastal counties. And they also bring disciplinary expertise, and they know the stakeholders in the region well. I know many of you have already reached out in the past, but reaching out, particularly if your work has a geographic focus or a disciplinary focus that overlaps with them, they're incredible resources for you. And then next, I want to share, we've got partnerships with two different organizations related to aquaculture, and you know how important aquaculture research is, both to our program and nationally. Emma Wirma is based at the Northern Aquaculture Demonstration Facility near Red Cliff, which is a facility of UW Stevens Point. And Fred Binkowski is based at the School of Freshwater Sciences at UW Milwaukee. Both certainly understand stakeholder needs and engagement related to aquaculture. And then our next slide here, we have a number of people that have more, I would say, of a coast-wide outreach and education mission. Ann Moser is on the call here. She's our education coordinator and our water librarian. And if you're thinking about an education a project, you certainly would want to reach out to Ann. Ginny Carlton also is an education specialist on our staff and can be helpful in that regard. Sharon Moan, I know you're on the call as well too. She's our Eat Wisconsin Fish outreach specialist. And then Tim Campbell is our aquatic invasive species outreach specialist. Adam Beckley looks at the area of coastal engineering. And then I, besides leading our extension program, also have a background in geographic information systems and urban regional planning. So hopefully that you can see kind of the broad range of our disciplinary backgrounds, and certainly tap into to our staff to kind of help with some of the outreach elements of the proposal. They're definitely considered very thoroughly by peer reviewers and by our panelists. So it's an important element of your proposal. And I think that's it for me. I think I'm going to turn it over to Moira now.
Thank you, David. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us on a lovely Friday. At least it's lovely here in Madison. We're in the home stretch. I'm going to talk briefly about science communications. I'm the communications lead. So just a quick slide about why science communication is valuable, what its goals are. We're trying to foster understanding of and confidence in science. We can all talk about science again. It's a good thing. We feel it's important to show the process, not just the end results of your research. So we'll want to talk to you about what you have going on throughout. We'll want to illuminate your hypothesis and demonstrate why this project is being undertaken. And then the final point for a purpose of why we do science communication, this is pretty blunt, but I think we all know that if we are successful in telling our stories and the outcomes of your good research, that's going to resonate with funders. So we're going to get more dollars out of Congress. It's going to make a difference within the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Department of Commerce, in which we're housed. And that just benefits all of us. So thanks. And Tom, if I could have the next slide. Just real briefly, who do we see our audiences are? Well, I just mentioned funders. In addition, I would say others within the science community. I would say educators, students, resource managers. Those are some of the folks that we try to reach with our communication products. I've put some just images here that they don't entirely cover the waterfront of products that we create, but this gives you a sense, sort of starting in the upper left-hand corner. That's an image from our quarterly newsletter that's been electronic only during the pandemic, but as we're starting to open up again, we will also be printing this again. It didn't seem to make sense to be sharing it in print version and sending it to offices where people were not. But as I said, that comes out quarterly. We have about 5,000 subscribers, and we're always trying to grow that. So by the time your projects may be funded in this round, maybe we'll be up to 6,000 or 7,000 subscribers. We'll see. We also have a biennial report. The upper right is just a demonstration of 2 active podcast series we have right now, and we have a wealth of audio collections on our website. These are some that we're doing currently, one on aquatic invasive species that's introduced, and then, as the title says, Wisconsin Water News. We do fact sheets sending to target audiences, and those fact sheets are also incredibly helpful when we meet with policymakers. We have a videographer on staff, so that's a little screenshot image of a YouTube video, a recent YouTube video, and then of course, social media. So what are the mechanisms for you and we to connect to create these sort of products? Well, one is you can always reach out to us. David had that on his last slide about how to find us in the staff directory. We're friendly folks, and we would love to explore ways to tell your stories. Likewise, if you're funded, additionally, you will hear from me every single month. At the start of the month, I will pop out an email and say, hey, funded researchers, do you have anything that's going on that you want to let us know about? It's not meant to be an onerous request. It's meant to be purely voluntary, but maybe you've got a paper that's been accepted recently, or you've got a student who just won an award, or you have some really cool field work that's going on and you'd like us to come and shoot some video or just get some still photography. Respond to that email. I'll push it out to you. It's an easy thing for you to get back to me on. You'll hear from us on an annual basis to do reporting. That's critically important to our funders within NOAA. We ask a lot of material in that, and then we turn around and use that material for a lot of things in the biennial report, for example, that I have demonstrated here on this slide. So that's important. Take a look for those sort of requests. We're in the tail end of one of those right now. Typically, those requests go out in January-ish, and we ask for them to be due back in March. And then the final way the mechanism of this works is we may just reach out to you. So you may hear from one of us, and this is my last slide. If you could go to that, Tom, thanks. I just thought I would list out folks on our staff, and some of these folks are on the call right now, and I would just ask them to unmute and just say something about themselves. So I think Marie's still on the call. So Marie, do you want to unmute and say hi?
Sure. Hi, I'm Marie Zwiekoff. I'm located up in the Superior office, but I write about research that is statewide, and some of you have written about already. So, and I also do the Wisconsin Water News podcast.
Great. Thanks, Marie. I think Yael is on today. So if she wants to unmute and emerge on camera.
Hi. I think I'm unmuted. I'm Yael again. I'm the graphic designer, and I'm here to help you with any kind of presentations or publications or social media needs that you have.
Thank you. And next we have Elizabeth. You will hear from Elizabeth really soon if you're funded, because she puts together, in addition to doing lots of other good things, and I'll let her unmute and say, but she does put together a project and people directory. So Elizabeth, do you want to say something?
Sure. Hi, I'm Elizabeth White. I'm the editor, and I've been with Sea Grant for a really, really long time. And I really enjoy actually the project directory. I enjoyed distilling the project into a nice, concise little summary of what you're working on. And I am here for grammar questions, punctuation questions, any sort of language or communication stuff you want help with. Feel free to send me an email with questions. I'm pretty much always available to help. So that's it for me.
Super, thanks. And Sharon, I don't know if you wanted to say anything, but we consider Sharon an honorary member of the communications team. Her work really overlaps with what we do.
Yes. Hi. So yeah, I have the great privilege of running between extension and communications, which is really a lot of fun. My position has been in contact with the food fish farmers in Wisconsin, as well as the commercial fishermen, and I'm trying to help them build connections with their audiences who eat fish. And I've been with the program since November, and it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more interesting things and working with everybody.
Thanks, Sharon. So Jennifer Smith could not be with us this afternoon. She's another science communicator, as is Marie. So she'd be somebody that would likely just reach out to you and say, I would like to do a story on you. And she coordinates our social media. She's based in Madison. Also based in Madison is Bonnie Willison, who is responsible for podcasting. She's done a season and a half so far of Introduced on aquatic invasive species, and she does some really fabulous, I think, impactful videos. And then Linda Campbell is our publications coordinator. She mails out hard copies of things. Believe it or not, some people still like that. So she could not be with us, but she is a longtime member of our program. And I myself have been with Sea Grant about 11 years, and I think it's a fabulous job telling the stories of your research and the other good work we do. And that's what I had. Jen, I think we kick it back to you and to Jim for questions. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think if people have questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat. You know, if we don't have a lot of people flooding the chat, I think it's fine to just unmute and ask your question too. It seems like that's depending on the numbers, sometimes that can people can trip over each other, but I think we're probably safe. Either way, if you want to type in your question or just unmute and verbalize it.
Hey, Jen, I just want to handle a
Sure.
couple that Mike Notaro has already put into the chat. And I just wanted to follow up with the first one. His first question was about the number of education proposals we typically fund. I put in there between 2 and 4, depending on the year, depending on the quality of that. And also embedded in that question about what do you expect the success rates of the full proposals. That's sort of a difficult question to ask because it's a combination of some of the smaller $25,000 proposals that are included in education, coupled with like our joint proposal with Ohio and Minnesota that has a $100,000 cap, correct, Jen? So it's not, and the rest have up to a $120,000 cap. So that can fluctuate a bit, and we basically go down the list and until we run out of money. You know, after the panels, we go down the list and we keep some in reserve in case additional funding comes in during the interim. And in, I think one case, in one of our education proposals, we were able to pick it up through our Water Resources Institute too. So we have a little bit of flexibility that
Yeah,
way.
and I'll just add, you know, if you just look sort of on aggregate, Mike, you know, we encouraged 45 and we'll fund between 12 and 16. You know, say we ended up on the low end, you know, that's about a 29% funding rate. So pretty good. We do, I mean, I will say just historical context, we get a lot of really good proposals, and we really struggle with especially that really solid middle. And so they're in any given year, at least as long as I've been here, there are fundable proposals that don't make our budget cut. Just we run out of money before we run out of good fundable proposals. And I just attribute that to the strength of the scientific and education network that we have here in the state. We're just so lucky.
And Mike, I want to go also to the other question that you posted about Sea Grant staff. I skimmed over that in the initial one. I said that principal investigator status, you have to have principal investigator status to submit a proposal. But the other part of that paragraph was also that our staff can only be associate investigators on a proposal, and they cannot draw salary off of any proposal submitted. So this keeps them totally separate, but allows them also to be involved as you create a proposal, but they just can't draw salary off of that. And we've put that into the category of associate investigator, not associate PI or co-PI or PI. It's associate investigator.
I just add to what Jim said too, you know, some cases the work with our staff might be really tight, and that's where that associate investigator role makes a lot of sense. But our staff are willing to help anybody out, and they don't need to be an associate investigator to do that, especially if it's a little more informal, or if it's an advisory role, or just you know, maybe just advice in the beginning, or a little bit of a check-in throughout a project. There's a range of ways that our staff can be involved.
And that is for omnibus proposals for this type of competition. If there's a national competition from Sea Grant for national funding, our staff can be involved in those, and in some cases can submit proposals themselves.
Give a few moments here if there are any other questions.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Jessie Conaway here, Nelson Institute. Bonjour, hello. Good to be on this with everyone. Really looking forward to hearing more about all the work. I had a question for Moira. Moira, your piece on the communications is informing our efforts. Should we get funded, correct?
Correct. Right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that. And thanks for sharing the resources though, because regardless, it sounds like some really good web resources and podcasts for, for use in Nelson Institute and
Right,
also
right.
with my students. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Hi, this is Angela Abling, and I was just wondering, it sounds like, definitely reaching out to staff ahead of time before the full proposal is in is a good idea. But I guess my question is, how well developed does the communications piece need to be? Or is that something that we can have some ideas for the full proposal and then develop more fully if we get funded? What's the recommendation there as far as how much to develop that ahead of time?
Moira, did you want to jump in or do you want me to?
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't have answered so quickly with Jessie. So yeah, I'm happy. Other folks on the comm staff are happy to chat with you about ideas you might have on how you might use our resources should you be funding. So I should have said that. I just feel like we can really blossom with it if you are funded. It's easier to obviously run with something that is funded. I don't, in terms of reviewing, like I said, I'm happy to talk to you. I'm not sure how to answer your question in terms of how well the proposal will review with the, the panel versus, how well developed it's, if you're talking about we want a podcast or we want a video. I think maybe this is sort of getting into your area, Jen, but I think what's critical is the science. And then we're just sort of a value added if you wanted to flesh that out a little bit in your proposal. But maybe Jim or Jen, do you want to? I'm a little bit floundering here.
Yeah,
So
that's okay. I'll jump in. Yeah, and I did want to add to Jessie too that like as Moira said, there will be a lot of contact after funding, but all of our staff, including our communication staff, have different expertise. If you wanted to produce a video, even on your own, Bonnie Willison, our videographer, might not be involved at all, but she can give, if you want any advice or run an idea by her, feel free as you're developing the proposal. She, others do podcasts and so does Bonnie, same thing. So if it's something new or you've done them before, but you kind of like maybe something you've seen Bonnie's done, feel free to reach out to anybody for ideas, support. And then Angela, just in terms of like a communications plan, I think the most important piece is to think about on the research side, we used to call it the outreach component. I think now it's called the impacts criteria. So really read through the criteria we have in the full proposal guidelines on being able to at least think about what kind of societal impacts your work might have and really taking that step in that piece to develop that bridge. How are you going to go from doing your research to potentially leading to an impact? So that involves communications, engagement, like David kind of highlighted on that service outreach engagement model. What you don't need to necessarily have like a very detailed, month by month communications plan charted out. We don't expect that at all, but how do you, or how have you already engaged with people? And what are some of the products that you envision that will help in the end make sure that those products are useful for people, that they're tools that somebody might be able to use? I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just would add that's an area that we've grown a lot in the last 6 to 8 years within Sea Grant. We're really encouraged from our national program to do that, and we see a really big difference in the quality of that component of the proposals that come in now versus even 8 years ago. And I'd say that is one of the pieces that often is a deciding factor for like a really solid two really solid scientific proposals, but one that's really developed and built relationships with a partner in a way that we think will translate in use of that science, that often could be a deciding factor between ones that get funded and ones that are really solid but that we just can't end up funding. Our outreach staff are also really good at that engagement piece and even just brainstorming. So like I said, feel free to reach out to them even just to brainstorm, like who might I even think about partnering with or teaming up with as I develop this proposal. They might have some great ideas. And Jim and I are happy to help too. Any other questions?
Hey, Jen, it's Christy. I have a sort of a nitty gritty in the weeds proposal question. So, you know, stakeholder engagement and communication is super important for Sea Grant proposals, but I'm not sure where in the proposal we should talk about that. Is that under the anticipated outcomes section or like coordination with Sea Grant? Is it outcomes?
Yeah, I would talk about it there, Christy. And I should have mentioned this too. Another really important piece is you all look through the full proposal guidelines, a place to demonstrate that or those relationships is through letters of support. So I strongly encourage you to think about how you might have partners or people you're teaming up with submit letters of support that demonstrate that engagement. Another way to do it is to have them be associate investigators on your proposal. If they're that engaged, you know, that it's something you'll be working with them throughout the life of the project. That's another way that sort of demonstrates to us, oh, like they're actually they're an investigator on this project. So those are that you guessed the right place. And those are a couple of other ways that I can suggest for how to demonstrate it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Jen.
Hey.
Just following up that letter of support. I know other agencies have sort of boilerplate text they want in those. Are the letters of support for Sea Grant pretty open to what the collaborator could put?
Yeah, they're very open. You know, like if you're working with the DNR, sometimes the letters from on high are very boilerplate. I think that's cool because that does show at a high level within an agency, there's some buy-in, but I also think that those sort of staff level letters that really show the manager on the ground or the central office person who's coordinating a statewide program, but at the staff level, I think those are really valuable, especially when they, you know, provide a little more detail on how that relationship is developed and how the work might be helping them achieve a statewide priority in some way. And that's just an example from one type of partner that's not that uncommon for Sea Grant proposals, but you know, that could be the same sort of letter from a local group or another department or NGO community. But they're very open. They're very open, Hillary. I mean, yeah. Whatever you think makes the most sense for your proposal and that particular relationship you're trying to demonstrate.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen.
And I just say, Jim and Moira and David, if you guys have anything else to add with the last few questions that you think maybe I haven't covered, feel free to chime in. And then if anybody else has any other questions, we're happy to stay on the line.
I don't necessarily have anything to add, but I do feel like Titus and Sharon got a chance to say hi. So if Titus and Ann just want to wave and say hi, that'd be good to kind of complete that picture.
Sure, and actually I'll answer Michael's question. I'm Ann Moser, librarian and education coordinator for Wisconsin Sea Grant. And thanks everyone for coming today. And Michael, your question about K-12 schools in the state, we serve the entire state of Wisconsin. So we don't ask or require that the schools you might work with are in the watershed because our work is statewide.
So including any school outside of Wisconsin that's in other Great Lakes regions would not be okay?
You know, the focus is on Wisconsin. It'll be interesting to hear, you know, kind of what you're thinking about in terms, if it's a partnership with another state, that would be okay, you know, but it has to have Wisconsin ties and Wisconsin impact.
And hey, while we're waiting, and just in case there are any other questions, and Titus too, Tom, if you could just advance the slide so people can see some email addresses while we're finishing up with questions. Thanks. Sorry, Titus, if you were about to jump in.
Hey, everybody, Titus Seilheimer here, fishery specialist. Yeah, any questions, let me know.
Thanks.
joined a little late.
Natalie, too.
Yeah, I joined a
Yes.
little late, but I'm here too. Hi, everyone. Natalie Chin. I'm at our Superior office and specialize in climate and tourism, which is a lot of things, but happy to talk more about proposals. So please reach out.
All right, I think we're winding down here. We'll stay on the line if anybody wants to stay and hang out a little bit. And if you have any questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes here. But I just wanted to leave you with some resources here. So my email address is there. Tom Zhang's email is there. He's your eDrop Pro. And then Melissa Boyce is your financial go-to for Wisconsin. If you're here related to the joint call, this is your Wisconsin contact, but in the full proposal guidelines, there's a contact for Kristen Fussell and for Val Brady. Val's in Minnesota, Kristen's in Ohio. So they're all a little different. So make sure you reach out to your state person for developing your state portion of those. And we've got our staff directory, so you can see all of our outreach and communications folks. And then, as I mentioned before, the RFP details are at this website. Make sure you look at that full proposal guidelines document. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll stay on for anyone who'd like to hang on and ask some questions, but everyone feel free to go. Have a great weekend and good luck with everything. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, this is Angela again.
Yeah.
I'm new to Sea Grant as far as I have not submitted a proposal before. So I actually just would be looking for any more advice that you would have. Like, I can read through the proposal guidelines and I think I can follow the directions there just fine. But just wondering, besides kind of making sure to have kind of these connections to the, like, sending this, like being able to share the story. And I mean, that seems kind of an important aspect to kind of have developed a little bit, and you need to have good science to build off of. So kind of both of those pieces are important. What other recommendations do you have just for someone who hasn't done this before?
Yeah, Jim, let me think, because it's like got to be a really strong scientific proposal. That's like a foundation. And then the next level are those proposals that develop relationships in some way with a stakeholder group or some relevant group. It can be very different who the relationships are with and how they kind of work across the different topics and proposals. But that second piece you just mentioned, Angela, that we talked about earlier, that's sort of like a really important next level. And then Jim and David and Moira and others, is there anything else that stands out to you? Is it Sea Grantee enough is a question that it's like a weird question that panels will sometimes struggle with, making sure you demonstrate that applicability to the Great Lakes. That is really important too. And that is sometimes where, of course, lots of things have application, but you just need to make sure for peer reviewers and particularly more the review panel that you've drawn that connection if it's a little bit less direct.
Sure.
So that's another kind of thing that can come up sometimes with panels.
And then it's something that just came up as you were talking. So the people reviewing, like, how much science should you assume? How much scientific knowledge should you assume they have? Like what type of language? Like, should I assume?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to define everything as I'm talking, or assume eutrophication?
No, I'm going to like national, international experts on every topic. So we're really looking for people who are actively publishing, who, might have anchored a review paper in the topic. We try to cover the topic well, the method, sometimes the reviewer, it's more important that there's a new method. So you want to make sure that they're an expert on the method. Maybe they've applied it to a different problem. So, we're kind of getting this pretty technical experts for the peer reviewers. And then our technical panelists are also, I would say they're regional/national leaders in a broad enough area that they can help us with the breadth that we're dealing with. We'll have about 7 panelists for the base research group, which your proposal would fall into. So we'll have about 7 people, but we'll have, an expert economist, we'll have an expert biogeochemist, we'll have a Great Lakes fisheries expert. Oh gosh, why am I blanking
Social
here?
scientists.
Yeah. Social scientist. We'll have
Coastal
an
processing.
aquaculture person. Yeah, someone who an engineer who's good. The people who've published and who are leaders in the field are the ones that it's a scientific competition.
Okay. Yes, that is helpful.
Yeah, and
Yep.
that is the very first level is the science, and not all of our external peer reviewers know Sea Grant, know the real details of how Sea Grant works. So we're asking them to really evaluate the science for science sake.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to the panel, all of the panel knows how Sea Grant works or is fairly familiar with Sea Grant, and many have done Sea Grant panels before. So they're there to actually normalize the external reviews too. They can say this person was way off with this particular review, and then they can help us moderate the reviews and then go that additional step of is this a good fit for Wisconsin Sea Grant.
And I'll just add, because Jesse's on the line too, Jesse, in case you're still hearing us too, with our new with our focus on JEDI, we also have at least 2 people on another Sea Grant director that knows Sea Grant's passion and desire to move forward on these issues and lead on these issues. So there's someone kind of at a high level with an expertise too, who knows where Sea Grant's trying to head with this, and also another person who kind of leads that work across the Sea Grant network specifically. So we've really tried to be purposeful about also including people who are real thought leaders and have kind of really tried to think through the challenges of meshing science and some of the JEDI objectives in a way that just acknowledges that the models for success for some of those proposals that are building capacity within underrepresented communities, for instance, it just might look different. And so, that's a new element we have this year that we're all growing our way through.
So I just want to share a couple resources, and then maybe ask Natalie and Ann to kind of weigh in a little bit here too. But first, so one thing maybe to take a kind of hopefully a quick kind of glance at is our strategic plan. You may be sparked by some ideas there, and that hopefully can help with kind of Sea Grant relevance. I think another kind of quick read, is the actionable science idea, right? And there's the website, kind of for our initial page is pretty quick to get through, and there you'll kind of, get our idea of what we mean about actionable science. It resonates in our program, I think, and then you can go much more, and there's endless ways to go deeper, kind of by looking into the resources. Jen is a really, is definitely kind of our thought leader, I think, on actionable science, but I think that actionable word there is, what does that mean? It gets back to the impact side. And then I think Natalie and Ann, kind of our staff here, they're living and breathing this kind of at that local level. And so Natalie, if you don't mind, just maybe you have some thoughts to share here.
Yeah. Let me think if I can think of anything that would be especially helpful without knowing the details of the proposal. I guess I'm a little bit limited about any advice I could offer, but I think talking to outreach staff, a lot of us are connected with a lot of local groups. And so maybe
Yeah.
we have a sense of needs and what kind of information would be useful. And so we can always share those insights with you. So I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate like knowing that it's basically encouraged that we reach out to staff and can get ideas and can more fully develop the things that we've started. So yeah.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Angela, was yours was a phosphorus.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Those are some
Julie,
biosolids.
right. Julia Nordyke might be a good one of our best staff fits for you.
Yeah, I had written her name down on my
Okay.
notes. Someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you guys answered my questions very well. So thank you.
All right, great. Well, thanks for joining. Any Jesse or Marilyn, did you guys have any other questions?
This is Jesse Conaway. I had one. Marilyn, do you need to go? I defer to you because I already got to ask one. Whoever else is on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen, for addressing the Jedi reviewer. You read my mind. I was going to ask you about that. I had a quick question. I don't want to keep us on too long, but I was looking at our pre-proposal, and I wanted to make sure that I'm on track because I have a focus area. So I've got Wisconsin targeted area, the Jedi, then base focus area, healthy coastal ecosystems. And then I went into the Sea Grant priority research areas. And then I talked about how our research touches on those. So question for your team, Jen and Jim and everybody, am I on track with that, or is that more than what's getting asked for?
I think it's worth spelling it out, but I wouldn't spend too much time in the proposal. You will do like when you go into eDrop and submit your proposal, you will select your targeted focus area Jedi, and you will have a place where you can kind of enter maybe like the specific verbiage, or I don't even remember if we require it for that one or not. I can't remember. Jesse, sorry about that. So we will sort of already have some indication of, you're kind of pointing out directly to us where your proposal fits within our RFP, because we ask those specific questions outside of the proposal submission. But I don't think it hurts to you just want to make the most of your space. So I don't think it hurts to draw those lines in the proposal, but don't spend a page on it, or I would spend no more than a paragraph or a couple sentences connecting it, because when we go to the peer reviewers, they're first going to look at the proposal as it stands on its own. We give them a link to the RFP, and hopefully they kind of check it against the RFP, but then the panel knows our priorities really well, and they should also be able to make those links. But if you think, with yours, because I think we talked about this because it focuses on Winnebago, I do think yours, we talked about this, the pre-proposal. Sometimes we get down to the where do we draw the line, or which ones make the cut? And oh gosh, this is hard because there's so many good ones. Just making sure you draw that connection with the Great Lakes, or the applicability of the work at the scale you're working, that it can scale to the whole coasts. I think that's one where you should spend some time just making sure that those connections to the Great Lakes are solid and detailed and strong. So no one says after the fact, well, this is great for Lake Winnebago, but what about Lake Michigan? And we know they're connected, but that's where it is good to help the reviewers make those connections.
Okay, thank you so much, Jen. Appreciate this opportunity today. Dave and Jim, nice to see you. Good to meet everybody else. Thank you, Sea Grant. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thanks so much.
Jesse. Good to see you.
Jesse.
All right. I think Marilyn, did you have any questions?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Okay.
Also our first foray into a Sea Grant proposal. So, but you have a lot of good direction here. So.
Yep. Just don't flounder around. If you get confused, just reach out to us. We're here to make it as easy as possible. So,
We really appreciate that. Yes.
all right.
And I love
Thanks.
all the outreach and communication tools you guys have available. That was really helpful to see that.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Have a
I-
good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
And then Angela, did you have any other questions?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Have a great weekend.